Hello, D23. Grab your beans, warm up your keepy-uppy skills, and get ready for a journey from the backyard to the big screen. So for real life, please give a big D23 welcome to our moderator, Emmy award-winning actress, producer, and one of animation's most iconic voices, Nancy Cartwright.
Fans of Bluey. I am so honored. I've spent about 46 years around animated families, and every now and then a show comes along that feels genuinely different. And I'm not talking about The Simpsons this time. No, this time I am talking about Bluey. Yeah, absolutely. As a fan, Bluey was one of those shows for me. It's funny, it's honest, and somehow it manages to speak to kids and adults at the same time. So today, we are going to talk about how it all began, how it grew, and where it's going from here. Does that sound good? So let's hear it from the creative team behind Bluey and get a look at what lies ahead for the Healer family. D23, please join me in welcoming Bluey creator, writer, and director, Joe Brum, and series director and co-director of the Bluey Movie, Richard Jeffrey. Guys, great to have you here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, before we get into how Bluey came to be, I'm interested in hearing from the both of you as to what got you into animation to begin with. What were some of your early influences?
Yeah, g'day D23. Well, for me it was Astro Boy. When I was really young, Astro Boy apparently was the only time in the house where my brothers and I were completely silent. And then obviously Disney early on, we had an old 50s encyclopedia that had a little fold-out section with Disney, and it had cells and things like that. And as I got older, I was about 10 when The Simpsons landed on us, and that sort of completely changed what I thought a cartoon could be. You know, it was just so different. The way the shots they used, the way they storyboarded, it just was the show we grew up with. So lots of things like Peanuts and The Far Side and things like that all fed in, but I didn't really know what an animator was. I just knew that I was that kid who just loved drawing. All my exercise books were just covered in drawings and all that. So when it came time to do something after high school, I kind of just fell into animation.
Yeah, and for me, drawing came very early and naturally, it felt like.
Yeah.
Memories of even all the way back to kindergarten, you know, and art class in kindergarten, just going, man, we get to do whatever we want. It felt so free and creative. So I really enjoyed drawing from a young age. And then probably one of my biggest influences was Asterix. When I discovered Asterix, I loved it. I just absolutely loved the drawing style, the felt so fun.
Yeah.
And so alive, you know, especially the classic just poof, and then you get these speed lines go out and all that's left is a pair of sandals. To me, it just felt so fun. So I love the world of Asterix and just two best mates going on quests together. And then a very influential film for me that really got, you know, sparked the idea of animation for me was, I have a memory of being a kid, my kids taking me to see The Jungle Book in the Civic Theatre in Auckland in New Zealand. And I was just enthralled by it. I just couldn't believe how magical it felt to just see characters and worlds come alive through drawing. So that was a massively influential moment for me. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, I want to do that. You know, I want to be an animator when I grow up.
Incredible.
And I followed that dream straight away. And then after that, I just poured myself into art. And I loved drawing. You know, I just spent years practicing my favourite characters, drawing Donald Duck and Daffy Duck, and just that satisfaction of when you start to get better at it, and it's like, I think I'm going to be okay at this. So I pursued that.
Incredible, Rich. Thank you for telling us that. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, I would love for both of you to talk us through the earliest days of Bluey. Where did the initial spark come from that set you on the path to creating the show?
Well, for me, I made short films straight out of art college, and I love telling my own stories and seeing them animated. And from very early on, I kind of knew there's sort of this itch in me that I had something the size of Bluey in me. I didn't really know it would take the form of Bluey, but it was just this thing of, look, if I can get in the right situation, I think I can tell a story or a bunch of stories that I think would you know, be worth telling. And then I sort of took that feeling, I guess, into my career as an animator. I went to London and I met Rich on a show called Charlie and Lola. Yeah, a long time ago now, but beautiful show, author-led, really lovely design style, great crew. I met my wife there, and it was just, I don't know, it was such a unforgettable sort of family experience where everyone just tried as hard as they could, and we all learned, we pushed each other, we helped each other if someone was short on frames that week. And then when that ended, it was sort of left a bit of a hole, really, career-wise. My wife and I moved back to Australia, and we had kids, and I started my own little studio. And that was great, you know, we did lots of shorts, but always those two kind of itches, that itch to get back in that room, and I guess that sort of monkey on my back to, you know, to tell my own stories was just slowly building and becoming, you know, it's like an unbearable urge to scratch, really. So about 8 years in, I kind of decided to do something about it.
Excellent, thank you. Rich?
Well, the big opportunity really was meeting Joe. You know, when we got together on Charlie and Lola, we just formed a fantastic friendship. And then when Joe was getting Bluey off the ground, he just said, "Man, I need you on it. What would it take to get you over here?" And really, for me, that was the start of my Bluey adventure.
So that's what's got it to pen and paper then? Pencil and paper, actually.
Yeah, pencil and paper, yeah.
Incredible. So you had this great relationship. So I think this is a great time to take a moment and take a look at some of your early drawings of the Bluey characters here. Maybe you could talk us through the early days of developing the show when you look at these.
Yeah, so, you know, I sat down at my desk, and I always loved Peppa Pig, right? That was the show that my kids loved, and I worked at their studio, and I just thought, look, you know, I love how each family is a different set of animals. So I thought, look, I can't rip that off. So I've always loved dogs, and I thought, okay, maybe each family could be a different dog. So I just started sketching all the other dogs that I had, you know, Chloe, the Salt Dalmatian, and Missy, and then Rusty, who was this Kelpie, an Australian sheepdog. And then I sort of, all right, it's got to be about Rusty. He was my dog as a teenager. I loved that dog so much. Drew him, and then drew some of his friends. Okay, like, you know, this one. And then I just drew this blue heeler that I used to have, Bluey. It was a real pain of a dog, actually. But And my eye, Rusty was sort of brown and black, right? And my eye just kept getting drawn to this blue, bright blue dog up in the corner. That just sat there for a while, but you know, the drawings themselves, you could argue they ended up very Simpsons arms and hands. I really love Delphine Duron, her eyes. I love the way she does her eyes. I'd imbibed the rules of the Simpsons silhouettes, you know, have a strong silhouette, so I did my best to have very strong diagonal ears. And, you know, this little picture of Rusty was born, but this little blue dog just kept dragging my eye to the top of my Photoshop page, and one day I just dragged Rusty up and dragged Bluey into the middle, and she never really left the center of my page. And, you know, it was... Then blue heelers have recessive genes where you get red heelers. So suddenly I didn't have to have a whole family of blue dogs, which I was having trouble distinguishing who was who. And so then I kind of had my blue and red, and it kind of all went from there.
Right, and Joe, you said something about the silhouette, because that's something that I had learned too, that the silhouette, if you could, I think Matt Groening said that, if you can identify just by the black silhouette of a character, you're in pretty good shape, and you remembered that.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, my wife, when she was storyboarding, it was the Simpsons, Brad Bird's Simpsons storyboarding guide, which everyone used, and it was things like that, which,
right.
You know, it's like the air you breathe as an animator, the Simpsons, it really is.
Incredible. Rich, anything to add?
No. He was in Africa. Richie moved to Africa and worked on Tinker Tales while I was doing all this, another Disney show. And so when we timed to start the studio, I was like, dude, if you can set...
Yeah, that was my sort of beginning of Bluey, really was, you know, the start of Bluey was really from the ground up. It was very much a grassroots thing. We were building the studio from nothing, and all our staff was sort of inexperienced. So that was kind of the skill set I could bring to Bluey and the skill set that Joe needed. So when we finished on Charlie and Lola, and Joe went back to Australia to start his family in a small studio, I moved to Africa to take on my first directing role on a project, a BBC project and Disney called Tinker Tales. And that was huge, that was massive. So we had to we moved to Kenya, we built a studio from nothing. Literally the day we arrived, there were just wires hanging from the roof, the computers weren't even there.
You found animators there?
We found animators there, yeah, not many, but we found some, because there was just no industry there. So we really we built it from the ground up. We literally built the studio. We employed, everyone we employed, we had to train, we had to teach them how to animate, we had to teach them how to use the software that we used. We had to teach our designers how to rig characters, and we even brought an editor out to train our editor. You know, so it really was starting from nothing. So that was something I'd been through, and it was a skill set I could bring, because we were really sort of going through the same thing again, as building the studio and building a team, and training everyone what to do. You know, it was part of the beginning of it, and so that was our beginning. That was my beginning of Bluey.
Wow. Beautiful, modest beginning, I think. Yeah, well done. Okay, so we have some character designs. You have an idea for a story, and you're drawing off some really incredible influences. So next up, you worked on a pilot, right? So, and very few people have actually seen this pilot. So today, thanks to Joe, we are sharing a special piece of Bluey history with all of you. Would you like to see this trailer? Let's take a look at this. Joe, can you please set this up?
So this I did at nights. I'd work on my normal job, then put the kids to bed, and then I'd do this at nights. And I used to go down to the park and push my daughter on the swings, and she'd always say, "Dad, can you push me all the way around?" And that was always a funny little phrase, and I'd say, "All right, I'll try my best." And it was 2010, and the iPhone had just come out. And so I would see a lot of parents, and I was probably one of them too, pushing swings while looking at the iPad, looking at the iPhone. So these two little ideas came together in this pilot.
Okay. This is brilliant. Truly, truly brilliant. So looking back to that pilot, what goes through your mind when you're watching it now?
Well, a lot of things. First of all, that song is by a band called Custard, which you may have heard of. And look, when I see that, honestly, when I see that, I think of one particular night, about halfway through it, about 10 o'clock at night, I was animating, and because I've been animating all day on my job, whenever I go over 14 or 15 hours a day, my tendonitis would flare up, so my arm was just on fire. And there was a little technical thing with the chain and the hand which I could not figure out. And I remember just sitting there trying to figure this thing out, hitting a wall, and I still remember the conversation I had in my head, which was basically, look man, no one knows you're doing this, no one's paying you to do this, you're doing this off your own back. It's really only Susie, my wife, and Mark who know you're doing it. You're doing okay and with your company. Just quit, give it up. You got another 4 or 5 weeks of these late nights doing it, just give it up. And luckily, I think, I guess the Bush parents that I grew up with, all of their stoicisms came back. Finish what you start, grit and bear it, all these things. Probably the only thing that got me to finish that pilot. And what I think about is, now I'm sitting here and this show has completely changed my life. It feels, and I tell you that story now, there's a sense of drama to that moment in your heads, right? It's like, wow, fork in the road. But the scary thing is, at the time, there's no drama. There's just, you're tired and pain, just quit it. It's completely innocuous decision. And so I'm constantly on the lookout now of these forks in the road, because they come with no drama sometimes, the big ones. Instead, I've just had to always just make sure I've got good habits, that I've finished what you start and things like that, so that I'm immune to taking the wrong fork, if that makes sense. And that the character design needed a lot of improvement.
Great, so you got it green lit. You got a green light, let's go on this thing. So how did Bluey evolve visually from that original pilot to the series we now know today?
Yes, hugely. We got some good character designers. Character design's not really my strength. We got great character designers in, and we just basically we changed the way, I don't know, we had to invent this whole world, didn't we, like of Australia?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the biggest evolutions, looking back to that pilot, we just look, and to where we come now, there's such a change, and not a huge change, but there's an evolution to the way things look. Right. And so coming up with, the kind of look of the show with our art directors, deciding what sort of language we were going to use, shape language, design language. A lot of the show, you'll notice, is really based on a lot of just verticals and horizontals and rounded rectangles, and that is the basis of the shape language of the show. Even the characters are really just big rectangles.
Yeah, because that works with our software. I knew what animation software I was going to animate it in. It was this cutout style, and I learned that if you try and design your characters in a way where the software you're using to animate them makes it difficult, then everything just grinds to a halt. So I was very clear, I'm going to animate these things in a way I'm going to design these things in a way that we could animate them effectively.
Good. And Joe, from a storytelling perspective, I assume this is where you started to develop your overall philosophy on the show and some of the story rules. Can you talk about how that started to develop in those early stages?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I had to learn to write on this show. I was an animator for all my career, and I'd made short films, but this is the first time I ever, bought final draft and learned to write. So I had a fair bit to learn on story structure and all that. But I think the show for me, it's, I didn't want to be preachy. I didn't want the show to it would present a problem, and I didn't really ever want to give a solution to the problem. For me, I've been through the wars a bit with our kids and hospital and everything that parents go through, and to me it felt more important to present a problem, and rather than say, have a little song saying, and here's the solution to that problem, it was present a problem and say, I've got that problem too, and it's tough work, good luck with it. This is what it's like to be
a little more real.
Yeah, a little more real, and to me that was always enough. You know, it was enough to know that you're not alone, and that every parent is awake at 2 a.m, and every kid struggles to go to sleep and wants to be in their parents' room and imagines they're in space sometimes. So that's kind of the heart of the Bluey storytelling, I guess, ethos for me. And other than that, just really making sure I wanted to hit kids and parents as well.
Okay, good, thank you. So Rich, you were there helping build Ludo Studios' animation capability in Brisbane and assembling the people who would make the show week after week, right?
Yeah.
So how much did that community of artists, directors, designers, writers, animators shape what Bluey ultimately became?
It's absolutely instrumental, you know, and a big part of sort of harking back just to what I was saying before, like, you know, bringing that skill set to the team, and everyone's starting from nothing. There's this real spirit to it, you know, you're all in it together from the start. You don't really know what you're doing. You do, but it's just such this huge adventure ahead of you, and you have to sort of, you know, find your way through it. So, you know, the biggest part of that is building the team. You know, it's such a huge collaborative thing that you have to do, and so you really have to create an environment where, you know, everyone feels good about coming to work every day and love what they're doing and love the show. So and that doesn't just come, you know, naturally. You have to build that, and it takes a huge amount of effort. But also, you know, we were so, I guess, in a way, unproven, and the studio was starting from nothing, and all of our crew, a lot of them was their first job out of uni, so they were very inexperienced in a way. So there was a lot of mentoring that we had to do as well. You know, our animators, there's a lot of, you know, anxiety that comes with it, and sometimes when you're learning to animate, there's a lot of indecision. You might not be confident because you don't have the experience. So we really had to work a lot with our animators to sort of help build that and mentor them through, you know. I remember one of our animators, Jerry, when he started, was very indecisive, wasn't confident about his decisions, and when we'd look at his work, he would give us 4 different endings, you know, go, well, I've tried this, and I've tried that, and you're kind of like, well, that's great, but we don't have the time for that, so you just got to be confident about your choices. And, you know, over time, when we worked with him, he really grew and ended up being one of our best animators.
Wow.
An
absolute gun.
Here's how Jerry got hired. I was interviewing Trudy at a pub outside the art college because I wanted Trudy as our designer. So yeah, great, Trudy, you're great. She goes, oh, you should talk to my boyfriend Jerry, he's an animator, he's over there. So he came down and said, all right, you're hired too. We hired 50 people in like a month. And we had to, like the Africa project, we had to teach everyone. It wasn't just learning to animate, it was teaching the software, because it was a very particular piece of software we were using. But it was all stuff from Charlie and Lola we implemented, and the main heartbeat was the Friday screening, where everyone looked at their work, you know, wherever it was at, we all got around, had a drink, and watched the progress. And that was key for us at Charlie and Lola, and key for us here, because nothing ever disappeared, you know? Like, animators love impressing fellow animators. That's just way more than anyone else, right? So you knew that what you did that week, you were going to be held accountable for up on the big screen. And
100%.
I swear, like, if you've been struggling with a scene or a little moment all week, and then you pull it off at the end of the week and everyone around laughs, it's, you know, I used to look at the animators' faces during those screenings, and you just fired up through the weekend, and you come back Monday ready to do all that again.
Yeah, that's it, and that's such a great way to build a team, you know, like, because end of the week, everyone gets to come together, we break out beers every Friday without fail, you know. 5 o'clock, pens down, beers come out, we show the work for the week, you can bring friends in, visitors, and so it's a really lovely way, and that was the kind of stuff that we loved about Charlie and Lola, and the way the company was run, and so we just brought everything we loved about that, our experience, we brought to the show, so that it could then be the next generation's turn to enjoy those things. So it was hard work, but it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of hard work.
It just sounds like a lot of blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, a learning curve, all that, and you put all of that into it, and obviously you know what happened from there. So very well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The result of building a team is that everyone loves what they're doing, and so a lot of love went into Bluey. You know, everyone poured their heart and soul into it, and I really think that comes out in the show. So, you know, when you ask, you know, how instrumental was the team to the success of Bluey, it was like, it was everything.
They draw their grandmother's backyard, you know, like, oh, this tree used to be in my dad's house. There was just things, because it was our hometown, you know, so they would, everything we loved about our hometown or our parents' houses, the art directors would draw in there, and things that their little niece would do, as, you know, the animators would put in. It was, yeah, it just became more than me and Rich. It was just this big collective thing.
Well, this is good to hear, because as a viewer, it all seems so natural. And like these characters, they've always existed. And I'm just kind of guessing it didn't feel that simple when you were making it, based on what you just said. It was this evolution, right?
100%. Like, it's funny because you can watch a show, right? Especially if you don't know much about animation, you can watch a show and it feels so effortless when you're watching it. You know? It's like, it's so much goes into it, like so much behind the scenes, and there's collectively hundreds of thousands of decisions that get made, you know, whether they're micro ones or big ones. But yeah,
it's decisions, right? That's what I learned from Kitty, our director on Charlie and Lola. It's just, your job as a director is just to make decisions all day. And you hope that the decisions, you've had the foreknowledge, you know, to know what a good decision is at the time. But I used to go home after work on season 1, and I'd drive across the bridge home, and I just used to feel so like, it's a hard thing to describe, but just really like I'd used every single thing that I'd ever learned in my 20 years before that career, from when I was a storyboarder and an animator and design all this. I'd been asked every question, I had to draw on it, and then a whole bunch of stuff I had to just make up on the spot, all within the last 8 hours. And that was a year of that. And it was just, you just felt like you're being fully utilised. It was the best feeling. It was the hardest year of my life, but it was that first season, but it was the most satisfying from a career point of view.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Can you talk about your writing process and where some of that inspiration came from?
Yeah, so, I mean, every episode is different for me. You know, they would come from different places, but always from observation. And, you know, to give you an example, you know, of a particularly emotional episode, I suppose, camping in season 1. That comes from a observational point. We went camping, and my daughter made friends with another little kid there, and then, you know, they played around for days, and then that kid just had to leave suddenly, as you do when you're camping, and there was sadness ensued. So there's that there, and I would always keep a list, I guess, of all those sort of things. But then with that one, I was like, all right, I'm gonna sort of think back and draw on every failed relationship and heartbreak and unrequited love and just the feeling that I would get from that. And I sort of sat with that feeling, and I thought, right, I'm gonna write an episode from this feeling. And so then I would, you know, take this situation, and then out came this story of, you know, this girl who meets a young boy, and they build a house together, and they, you know, go look for food together, and they work through communications problems together, and then they, you know, start a new generation together, and then, of course, the kid has to unexpectedly leave, and, you know, it's all horrible, but then there's this sort of wider perspective on all that. And I guess that's, you know, the first part of that is me writing from that feeling, and then the sort of happy ending of Bluey is, you know, it's that wider perspective of that feeling that, you know, this, even though this was horrible and that, it's sort of been a good thing in your life. So that's, you know, that's how an episode like that comes out. It's got an emotional core, and I remember that was the first time I did that, and then when that episode came out, it was this reaction of, you know, suddenly our producers were bringing me gun on crying on the train reading the script and stuff. No, that's weird. But so every episode's different, but that's pretty common. That's what I would do for some of the big key eps like Sleepy Time and all this, is just try and dig into my life and my wife's life. And, you know, Baby Race was another example. That was just my wife's story, and I wrote that first script was like, I'm gonna try and capture what you went through, you know. And I wrote it, and it was, this isn't it. This wasn't it. And anyway, I got a text a week later, and it was from my wife saying she'd found the script on the coffee table and read it, and she'd been crying for 15 minutes. So yeah, it's, you know, that's Bluey. It's every inch of my life that I was able to pull out of myself. It wasn't always a pretty experience.
Incredible. Yeah. And to think you had to do that all in 7 minutes. You know, Simpsons is like 21, a lot of children's programming 11 minutes, and somehow you made a bold decision to make it 7 minutes. That's really courageous.
Well, I mean, I've made short films in my life, and I made them by myself, and you know, 3 minutes is like making a feature film when it's by yourself. So 7 minutes to me was like, holy dude, this is amazing in 7 minutes. But yeah, it's a challenge. There wasn't much art to it. Peppa Pig was 5 minutes, and Charlie and Lola was 11. I thought, we're gonna go in the middle.
Well, thank you. We can't talk about Bluey without spending a little bit of time talking about play. Because play sits at the heart of Bluey, right guys? It's all about play. Yeah. So it's more than just a source of fun or imagination. It feels like a philosophy that runs through the entire show. So can you both talk about why it's so important to put play at the center of Bluey?
Because that's all my kids wanted to do, you know. Like I'd wake up at 4, and my job early on was to get my wife another couple of hours of a lie-in. So I would go downstairs at 4 in the morning and play with the kids for 2 or 3 hours. And it's what they always wanted to do. It just comes natural to young kids, and their play evolves. And I think you know, these games would evolve, and this game, Magic Statues, I would play with the kids, and they loved it, right? And we went to visit our friends, and we played it all together with their kids. And we didn't see these friends very often, and then I think maybe 6 months later we came back, and the first thing Ruby did, she ran out and said, can we play Magic Statues? And I thought, wow, like some games, there's just a structure to them that I think, you know, all kids like. So I think when it came time to write Bluey, I thought, all right, well, if different kids love playing these games, maybe they will like watching families play them. And I then sort of learned what it is when you're playing, like there's kids playing with kids, but when it's the parent playing with them, there's sort of this persona that the kids like you to have that makes for the most enjoyment for them. And you know, that's if the more serious and debonair and kind of irate that you can get when they make things go wrong for you in the game, the more they seem to enjoy it. So that kind of became Ben's role, and it really worked out perfectly, because I think a lot of the criticism of cartoons at the time were, and one of the things that I'm hoping you love about Bluey is that the parents are, they're really good parents, you know, and they're smart parents, and they outsmart the kids. They're always one step ahead of the kids. Whereas maybe other shows, the parents, and particularly the dads, are a bit of a donut. So by having this alter ego of Bandit and Chili when they're in game, being that donut, and then when they switch back into normal and they're normal, I sort of had my cake and could eat it too. You know what I mean? Bandit could be a buffoon, and he could trip over and do all this stuff and get irate, yet still switch into being a smart sort of, you know, modern parent, which I was surrounded by at the time. So, and then, you know, this whole other thing of kids, you know, playing with other kids. I mean, I could bore you for hours with what that does, but a lot of that I did put in the show, everything I'd learned from play and how important it is for, you know, from basically, to put it simply, we're all born as kind of muffin, but we have to end up being a social creature who thinks of everyone around them, and it's in that post-muffin, Bluey and Bingo age group that where that kids want to play with other kids, that they have to learn to make sacrifices and da-da-da. And so much of Bluey is just episodes about those little sacrifices getting made.
This is really good. Thank you. You guys, you digging this? Yeah. This is really good. So I'm curious, like when you were making the show, were you aware of how effective the bonding would be between the parents and the kids while they were watching the show?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was the main thing. I used to sit through, my wife and I used to sit through some kids' cartoons that left a little bit to be desired sometimes for, you know, for the adult in the room. And I'd always loved shows like The Simpsons and Gavin and Stacey, these co-viewing shows. And for me, I just set myself the challenge of, all right, well, can I slide that age group down so that a 4-year-old and a 40-year-old are entertained at the same time? And I mean, that was probably the biggest challenge I set myself, and it's why Bluey scripts are incredibly hard to write. I mean, look, the other thing, I didn't want to just have jokes that sailed over the kids' heads. That wasn't, you know, it wasn't really, and movie references and things that the kids just wouldn't have seen. So I kind of just looked to home, and, you know, there was so much shared laughter in our house with games and things, you know. It wasn't like, we would all laugh at the same thing, maybe in a slightly different way, but there was just, you know, there's group laughter. So I just thought, okay, I've got to find where that shared laughter is and make the show about that. And, you know, and then one thing I would do is, say in an episode like Facey Talk, what I would do is I would show the kids learning something, you know, like Muffin's learning not to hog and not to be selfish and to share with her iPad, but meanwhile I'd check in on the adults. So meanwhile Stripe and Trixie are learning to share parenting duties, you know. And those eps, Cafe was another one that did that, Pirates, they were my favourite eps because, you know, when you learn stuff when you're 4, it's not like, all right, that's done, I don't need to deal with that again. It's like, no, you need to keep using that, right, throughout your life. And, you know, an episode like Onesies, to me it's heartbreaking because, you know, Bluey learns just that she can't get her cheetah costume, you know, she really wanted that, and it's just such a, I guess, to her meaningful at the time, but innocuous thing, but you learn that skill to understand that you can't always get the things in life that you want, so that, you know, later on, when there's things you really want, and it's really, you know, can split your heart in two, that, you know, you can't always get them.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. So, as a mom and a grandma, Nana, one of the reasons I connect so much with the show is thanks to Bandit Chili. So, I think it's time that we bring out the healer parents. What do you guys think of that? The voice of Chili Healer, Melanie Zanetti, and the voice of Bandit Healer, David McCormick. Excellent. Welcome to D23, you two.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
So welcome. So what's this been like for you? You know, when did each of you realize that Bluey becomes something much bigger than a children's television show?
Well, when it got on TV in Australia, I thought that was pretty big. And then it got on TV around the world, and now it's sort of universal. It's massive. I don't know. I'm constantly amazed by how popular and great it's going with everyone. So I'm only realizing now.
No?
I was spending a lot of time between Australia and here when it started to grow and was picked up here. And the speed in which I had Americans being so excited about this show and ending up in like a gas station in the middle of nowhere and there's Bluey toys. I remember being at, this was all adults by the way, it was a party for people in the horror film community. And my friends are famous cartoon dog, and there were grown men jumping out of this swimming pool, running to call their wives. And it was like, okay, this show has legs.
Thank you so much.
I might know a thing or two about recognizable voices. I'm just curious, have either of you been recognized in public? I'm saying in public thanks to your voices.
Nancy, I never have in my entire life. My voice is pretty close to Chili's. It's probably a little more neutral. I lean into those vowels a bit when I'm playing Mum, but never, which is kind of amazing because you have this, like, you're in this incredibly popular show, but you have complete anonymity. It's the best of both worlds.
It's a perfect gig, isn't it? I only got recognised once at Woolworths at Roselands in New South Wales, in Sydney, and a woman came from another, I was talking to my kids, and a woman came from the other island and said, "You sound exactly like Bandit on Bluey." And I was like, yeah, I do the voice, like, I'm so happy to do it, you know, blah, blah. And she's like, "Oh, no, actually, you don't actually sound so it's nice." And I was like, I do Bandit, listen, you know, biscuits. And the more I did it, the less they, you know, when you're trying to convince someone and they believe you less, and then she's like, "Nah, you don't sound anything like him."
I totally can relate to that. So I'm curious, when did Chili and Bandit click for each of you? Like, was there a specific moment when they stopped being lines on a page and then became real characters?
After you, man.
Nancy, I have to say straight away, and that is the power of the writing in this show.
Yeah.
Joe's writing. It was so clear who this character was, her warmth, her wit, her kindness, her tenacity, how good she was with these little pups. It was very organic and instant.
It took me a little while because I'm not used to this sort of thing. I haven't really done this before. So we were in the studio initially with Joe, and we were doing an episode, and it was like, oh, cool. You know, they've highlighted the lines on the page, I'm gonna read those, and that's cool. And I was having fun. But then it was about a dad with two daughters, about the same age as my daughters. So as we did a couple more episodes, I started to think, wow, this is basically my life. I'm Bandit. And the episodes resonated so much with me and with my kids and my wife, Lucy, who was like, in all seriousness, like, "Are you giving them plot ideas?" I'm like, no, they write and they come up with it all. I'm just saying these things. But that exact thing happened to us yesterday. I guess that's just why the show's so relatable just to so many people, you know. I always think it's an adult show that kids like. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, so okay, we're going to move on to something very exciting coming to the world of Bluey. What began as a 7-minute series grew into something much bigger, as you know, in the storytelling universe. So let's turn our attention to Bluey's biggest adventure yet. To help us join and talk about this is about Bluey on the big screen. Please join me in welcoming producer of the Bluey Movie, Amber Naismith. Welcome. Now I think we should kick things off with a look at what you and the team launched last night. Can you give us the honors, please?
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of you here saw the trailer last night. It's a very special piece for us, so why don't we watch it together again?
Perfect.
I'll get it. Good one, Bingo. Thanks, Louie. Don't let it touch the ground. Oh no. Run!
That's a real teaser. So Amber, making a Bluey movie sounds exciting right up until the moment you actually have the daunting task of making the movie. So how did you get involved?
Yeah, I was actually living and working in LA at one of the major studios when I got a call from Joe. I was working at the same studio as a director that Joe had met at Annecy the year before, and Joe had decided to make the movie and was looking for a producer. So when I got the call, I went home and I watched all 3 seasons of Bluey and cried my way through the whole thing in a weekend, and I knew that I wanted to be involved in it. And then, yeah, like as an Australian as well, like I felt an almost duty to come home and make this movie. You know, Bluey has set the bar for Australian content on the global stage, and I just wanted to be involved, and Joe was such a fantastic person when I met him as well, and so I just knew it would be the best thing for me to do.
Personal game changer for you, lovely. So obviously we see how the characters look in all new CG style. Can you and Joe and Rich also talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, well, you know, when I came on, the movie was already going to be CG, which is why I got involved. But obviously with moving to a feature-length format and a theatrical release, we knew that it needed to be cinematic in its scope and scale. So, you know, Joe thought about what medium he was going to make the movie in, and you should talk about how you came to that.
Yeah, and Joe and I had conversations really early on, even sort of before the film was going to be, but we sort of had discussions on, you know, if we ever did a film, how would you do it? Like, would you do it in 2D? Would you maybe keep it in 2D, but you would glow it up a bit more and put more into it, or would you do it 3D? And then, so that was kind of a really early discussion, and then Joe just came to me one day and said, we're going to do it in 3D. I was like, yeah, and I think it was a great new approach for us as well. It was very fun to take it into 3D. Obviously there's a lot you've got to think about and keeping faithful to the show, but we just felt for cinema that it was a really nice way to bring it into a new cinematic realm.
Yeah, look, for me, the first short film I ever made in my 3rd year of art college was in 3D. 2 years before that, I was hand-drawn animator, and then this new software came in, it was 97, right? The same one they used on Jurassic Park, and it just blew my mind. I made this big short film of the Easter Island statue busting out and playing with this little tourist, and it sort of brought the house down at our screening, and I just thought I'm going to be a 3D animator, and then I spent the rest of my career in 2D, hand-drawn, and I love 2D and I love hand-drawn, but 3D was the thing. And at the same time as I made that film, Toy Story was coming out, or had just come out, and it felt like this is my generation of animation. And when it came time to do this movie, it actually wasn't a hard decision, and that doesn't mean I don't love the 2D show, but I just wanted to create, we're always striving to get a beauty of nature in the show, and I wanted to have every tool available to capture a beautiful blade of grass and light rays and all that. And I wanted kids to be able to feel like they could reach in and give these little dogs a scratch on their furry heads. So it had to be 3D.
Yeah, I think that's, creating a really immersive world. So I like to think of it as like the show is how we see Bluey's world, but the film is how Bluey sees her own world. So, we're shooting down low when we're with the young characters, with the kids. Like Joe sort of spoke about before, you've got the adults drama going on and the children's drama, and 3D allows us to be down with the characters, down with the kids, running around on the best day ever and being with them and feeling like you're another one of the pack. So that we're allowed we can do that with the cinematic lensing that we can use in 3D. Also, it presented its own challenges, obviously, translating a beloved 2D animation into a 3D one and staying true to that as well. But yeah, as Joe said, it's like getting all that detail, the fur and, the fingerprints on the door handles and the window panes and the worn floorboards in the healer house.
And we had to give them butts.
Yeah, and the very little butts. The very little butts. That was what I had to talk about. But yeah, it just makes you feel like you're in the Bluey house, you're in the healer house, in that Queenslander, and it feels lived in and worn, and that you can notice all those little details, the dust motes, as Joe mentioned before, the water droplets on blades of grass, and just feel really immersed in Bluey's world.
Beautiful, thank you for that. And so moving into the 2D world, from the 2D world into the 3D medium must have been, obviously it's been very challenging, but what was the first thing that broke when you moved Bluey into CG?
I mean, there's a couple of things, and Rich will talk about one, but you know, the character design is obviously, and we say this in the most beloved way, is like a fridge with legs. So, you know, we knew immediately that we were going to have to, while staying true to that design, create some sort of, you know, tapering of the body. They don't have necks, so just turning their heads and bending over was going to be a challenge in 3D. So we did, you know, need to go in and design Bluey, but make sure that those characters absolutely felt like the same characters from the series. So just being really subtle changes that we needed to make.
And we really felt the responsibility of being faithful to the show. You know, going from 2D to 3D is a very hard transition. There's a lot of cheats in 2D. You know, our 2D characters have a front face, a three-quarter and a side, and they're fixed views, and you can cheat things. But 3D you can't. There's no hiding. You're seeing the characters from all angles. So, so we really wanted to be faithful to the show, and outside of the characters too, creating the world around the house. The house is a lot of fun. I'm sure you heard it first from us, but everyone knows it, but the house is just a puzzle. It makes no sense whatsoever. And if you're confused, there's times where we have no idea. Like, the front of the house is single level, the back of our house is 2. It's small from the front. Bob Bilby, we had a garage. Where's the garage? You know, we'll just make up rooms. Laundry, where's the laundry? Oh, I don't know. Should we stick it downstairs? Yeah, sounds good.
Should we create it downstairs?
Should we create it downstairs? Yeah. But then going to the film, we were forced to work it out. There's parts of the house that make sense, of course, the balcony and the kitchen, the TV room, and the big green room. But where are they? You know, where are they, and how do they connect? And so we had to work that out for the film. And so before production started, Joe and I just worked away, and I built the house in 3D.
Oh, nice.
It was a 3D sketch, but it was like a sketch effectively, but planning out where all the rooms were and what the layout of the house is going to be according to what had to happen in the script. So that was a huge amount of fun, just sort of working it out, and you know, Joe would come to me and be like, isn't the balcony facing the other way? I thought that looked out to Wendy's house, and you know, cold sweat. It's
not passing any building codes, I can tell you.
Yeah. So that was a huge amount of fun, like really going from 2D into 3D. It was such a challenge, but a really exciting one.
Good. So Mel and Davo, what has it been like for you two seeing Bandit and Chili head to the big screen? Personally, what's that like?
I'm excited by the concept. We haven't really seen much yet, though, have we?
Yeah, we have been kind of kept in the dark in terms of animation-wise. This is new for us too, guys, so it's very exciting.
We're excited.
Yeah, brave new world.
I bet they're going to look amazing.
I am very confident. But it's been incredible going from this show that started in Australia, in Brisbane, and now is going to be on the big screen internationally. It's a real pinch ourselves moment.
But doing your hair, Dave, that was a tricky one because, well, you know, there's the quite graphic salt and pepper stripes that he's got, but we had to dial.
George Clooney-esque, yes.
Well, we went into George Clooney's granddad, and then we had to dial it back. And I think we found just quite the right, you know.
Well, like I said, I can't wait to see me.
That'll be the next trailer.
So Joe, I know you can't reveal too much about the plot of the movie, but can you just touch on just a little bit about what you hope audiences experience when they go out to the theaters next summer?
Yeah, look, if I could dream anything for this movie, this is what I want. I want like a little 4-year-old to be sitting in one row, you know, one seat in the movies, and I want them to look down, I want them to see all their brothers and sisters, and I want to see their parents, and then maybe even like their 22, 23-year-old, you know, aunties or something, and then I want to see even their grandparents all looking up and sort of buzzing on the same movie. And I want that maybe to even be their first movie experience, and they not only love this movie, but they then love movies.
Good. I don't want to be Miss Youngers, but I think I may speak for everybody in the audience when I say that we are all ready for this movie, right? I understand you have a little surprise for us, right?
Yes, we do. I know everyone saw our poster that was released yesterday, that's up on the screen, but we've also created a very special poster just for D23. And you'll all get one here today.
Okay, before we're wrapping this up here at the end, I figured we could take a couple quick rapid fire questions, maybe starting with Dave down at that end and moving up this way. So, other than the core healer family, which character from the world of Bluey is your favorite?
My favorite character from the world of Bluey is a character called Unicorse, which I believe is going to have its own spin-off movie in November 2029. Just keep it in this room. I'm still in negotiations.
Mel, how about you?
I love Calypso. Megan Washington, who plays her, has the most incredible voice. And when she sang the song at the end of The Sign, tears down onto my clothes.
It's so hard to pick another one, but I do love Rusty.
Rusty for me, yeah. Rusty.
Love Rusty.
Yeah, we talked about this last night actually, and we all came up to Rusty. It's like,
It was almost his show, you know. Yeah, he's just a good kid. He's a good kid.
And I love the friendship between Jack and Rusty and Army. It's very sweet. And cricket, Rusty and cricket for me is.
Oh, don't forget cricket.
Oh, when I read the script and the catch.
And I spoke to his mum, the kid who plays Rusty, one time, and she said, you know what, the thing is, the little kid, he's exactly like Rusty. He's just a good kid.
Awesome. Okay, here's another one. Okay, Joe, starting with you this time. If you had to pick your favorite episode or a couple of your favorites, which would it be?
The Sign, for me, because all of our crew worked on it. It's the only ep where you look at the credits and everyone who ever worked on Bluey really is in that. It was just such a magic experience.
Beautiful. Rich?
Probably Sleepy Time for me. That was just one episode that really, we just gave it everything, that episode. And I loved working on it. Rain, I love the episodes where we do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And Rain for me was just beautiful. And cricket.
And cricket.
Cricket's lovely, yeah. There's so many, but
Yeah. Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, similarly to Rich, like I love what Bluey does, which is to take different episodes and can actually explore different abstract, almost art house ideas within that medium, which I think is just a real genius. So yeah, I love Rain as well and Sleepy Time for that reason, just for the filmmaking in them as well as the stories. But I also love Flat Pack.
Look, I do think Sleepy Time is a masterpiece, along with The Sign. They're probably my favorites, but also honorable mention to Hammer Barn, because when I first read that script, I was laughing out loud by myself in my bed, and it turned out even funnier than the script.
I quite like the episode Granddad, just the last little bit where they're sitting and Chili goes, we used to swim here, and you know, that was years ago, and Granddad goes, it was just yesterday. I think it sort of sums up human civilization over the last 2,000 years in about 5 seconds.
All right. Well, Dave, Mel, Amber, Rich, Joe, thank you so much for this today. I think your fans really appreciate you all being here and sharing your personal... I'll speak for all of you, I'm sure. Thank you to all the fans, all of you here at D23 that came and continue to support Bluey, the series, and especially the upcoming Bluey the movie. Thank you so much for coming.